physiologically very different way. It doesn't target the same receptors in the brain. So it's unclear whether this speed with which you fall asleep after having a session with marijuana is actually natural sleep. Let's assume it is. The problem, however, is that it then will start to disrupt REM sleep. It will start to block the process. We think perhaps at the level of the brainstem, which is where these two types of sleep, non-REM and REM sleep, will actually get sort of worked out. That's where marijuana may actually impact dream sleep and shut it down and block it.
Have there been any studies on chronic marijuana smokers, like those dawn to dusk type characters that just are constantly high, like, and what happens to their brain from not, because they must never hit REM sleep?
Yeah, so people haven't looked at marijuana, they have looked at alcohol though. Exactly that. So what happens is if you look at alcohol, they will have something often when they come off alcohol, something called delirium tremens, which is where the sort of DT, what happens is that the alcohol has been blocking dream sleep for so long, and the pressure for dream sleep has built up so powerfully in the brain, it actually just spills over into wakefulness. And so the brain just says, look, okay, if I'm not going to get this dream sleep whilst you're asleep, I'm just going to take it whilst you're awake. And so you start to essentially dream while you're awake. It's this sort of collision of two states of consciousness. So you get delirium.
Wow. I always thought the DTs were detoxing. When someone said someone's going through the DTs.
Okay, yeah.
So it's delirium tremor?
Yeah, delirium tremens, yeah.
Tremens. So what is going on with them when this is happening? So if they are going through this delirium during the day while they're conscious, what's physiologically happening?
So it's almost as though the veil of REM sleep gets pulled over the waking brain, as it were. So you have this mixed state of consciousness that you can pick up with brainwave recordings. And it just tells me, I mean, in some ways, how necessary sleep must be. If that's the lengths that the brain will go to get that which it's been missing, it just shows you why, it took Mother Nature 3.6 million years to put this thing called an 8-hour sleep necessity in place. And we've come along, and within the space of 100 years, we've lopped off almost 20% of that, if you look at the data.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So many people take pride in that too. I don't need 8 hours sleep. I got 3. I'm good, ready to go, kick ass, and dominate the world.
Yeah. It's this sort of like sleep machismo sort of attitude.
There is a lot of that, right?
Yeah. And
Not me, baby. I like sleep.
Well, I mean, you'd be glad to know that then, men who sleep 5 to 6 hours a night will have a level of testosterone which is that of someone 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age you by a decade in terms of that critical aspect of wellness, virility, muscle strength.
10 years? That's incredible. Wow.
So what you want to do?
They made something else the official Thanksgiving dessert because that's what they wanted us to believe.
Now, if you follow me, we'll see the most famous depiction.
Okay.
Following my video on Plagueis during the Phantom Menace, once I mentioned Sidious had already taken Maul on as his apprentice, while Plagueis was still alive, many asked the very valid question. If the rule of 2 was still in play here, why had Sidious, who is not currently the reigning Sith, have an apprentice of his own? The rule of 2 was designed to one day not only bring the Sith back to prominence, but to have them ultimately claim the galaxy itself once again. It was created to eliminate the infighting and division of power within the Sith Empire, as they began constantly fighting among...
Hi. This is probably going to be one of the strangest videos. And it feels right to record it, and maybe even right to post it. So it's kind of setting an intention to get there if I can. This video is about Emma Watson and a very strange series of experiences that I've had that have led me to this moment. And in order to be able to explain what that means, we have to go back in time a little bit. So, sometime toward the end of 2016, maybe beginning of 2017, 2.5 years ago, I had a psychedelic journey using psilocybin, where I had this very profound, realistic vision experience. Really, it's like a visionary experience of Emma Watson and I talking, and it was just as if it was as if I was just there in a room chatting with her, and she was interested in spirituality and in talking to me about all manner of different things, and we had this really long conversation, and afterwards I was like, huh, that was very interesting, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm like, just kind of let it go. And then about a week later, I did some more psilocybin, and it happened again, but this time it was different. This time she was taking me somewhere to help resolve some life challenge and problem that I'd have, that I'd created in my life, just from, you know, whatever, you know, life drama stuff. And she was like helping me solve it. And I was like, oh, that was also very cool. And I didn't know what to make of it. And it was not a vision that I sought out. You know, I never spent time focusing on or thinking of Emma. I was just living my life, and this came to me, this happened to me, or happened through me, and I never knew what it meant. Now, fast forward about a year, maybe a few other little glimpses and connections at certain points, but nothing really major, and I kind of let it go. I was focused on making the Patch Tarot deck and everything like that, but about a year later, I came to Rhythmia for the first time. Now, I'm actually filming this at Rhythmia right now, and it's largely because of last night's ceremony. It was the first ceremony this week that I'm filming this, but we'll get there. So the first time I came to Rhythmia, I had a very special intention for myself. I said I wanted to embody the Spirit of Christ, and it was a very, very profound week. But in and amongst those experiences and that intention, once again, it actually started, it was the first night, the first ceremony. I remember lying down at one point, and I just felt this presence, like these eyes staring at me, like right here. And I'm like, oh. And I like sort of with my mind's eye, and I turned my head, I guess, and like looked over, and it's Emma Watson staring at me. And I'm like, hi. And then immediately my jerk reaction in that moment, and I could see this bit of like, instead of just asking her like, what's up, just went, I'm sorry, and I just pushed away on her. I was like, there's nothing here, there's nothing to see, there's nothing to do, I don't know what you want, but go away. And I actually like pushed away on her. I was like, no thank you, you know? And I remember seeing, sort of as her energy disappeared, there were like fireworks that were exploding. And I just was like, okay. And I went through the rest of the ceremony, and there were all manner of different visions that were related to just, you know, my own healing and reconciling other past traumas or events and life changes and stuff like that. And then 2 days later is where I didn't hear from her again for 2 days. And then on the third night, which is actually the goddess night here at Rhythmia, they do a very divine, feminine, sacred energy. And it was on that night I had what felt like an hour-long vision of this future with her.
That's so fucking
and I had no
weird.
idea what to make of it. I was so confused and like beside myself with like, it was such a beautiful vision, but it was so incongruent with me and my energy and my perception of myself. And at the same time, like I never sought out to pursue or, you know, have an attraction or relationship or anything like that with, you know, that wasn't really on my mind. And so seeing that vision, I'm like, I have no idea what this is actually supposed to be teaching me, right? Because it's very easy to identify it as, oh, that's a vision of the future. Boom. And like, And I don't want to take it that way because that just creates a really unhealthy attachment. And so I was with it for a long time. I'm like, because for all I know, Emma Watson's never even heard of spirit science. For all I know, she has no idea who I am, and that would be just fine, right? Like, this whole thing, I recognized very quickly that it had the potential to become a huge ego trip. And in ways, it was happening a little bit because I was just like, so like, I just thought about it a lot. So it really, like, because I really wanted to understand it and feel it and be like, what? I don't know. And so what I decided to do was to make it about my growth. And now, over the next year and a half, really, there have been countless dreams, psychedelic visions, and sometimes even just in a regular meditation, where it's as if she just either appears in front of me or there's some vision with her, but it feels as real as sitting in front of someone and talking to them. Like, it doesn't feel like this sort of mystical, magical, ooh, kind of like energy, thing. It feels like someone just came into my life and said, "Hi, it's nice to meet you." And oh boy, yeah. So for the next year and a half, essentially, like leading up to now, I've tried to look at this from the perspective of being like, it doesn't really matter or have anything to do with her, and make it about my growth. And one of the biggest things was really like my self-worth as a person, because for so long, ever since I was a kid, and bullies in school and this and that kind of stuff, my self-worth has been really low, and it's been really hard to just like see myself as a divine being. And of course, my message and part of spirit science is that we are all divine beings, and I have to step into that in order to truly, and this is how I made the visions really like kind of explain them, is like, imagine yourself as someone who could actually be loved by someone like Emma Watson, who is, by all intents and purposes, a divine being. And this is actually why I wanted to make this video today, because last night I did my first ceremony here at Rhythmia, the first night, and the whole first, like, you normally take 2 cups of ayahuasca every night, and so just on the first cup alone, I went through this really kind of deep purging of, like, after 2 years of consistently receiving visions that I feel like, for the most part, I didn't seek out, like, because there's a difference between, like, you're sitting here and then something comes to you, an energy comes to you, or an experience in a meditation, or even in life, you're existing and someone comes to you, versus you going and like projecting your energy out, or you're going and finding someone, right? And after 2 years of having these experiences, I developed a little bit of an attachment to her, and really in that time, I mean, like, it compelled me. Like, I've learned so much from her because of the visions. It compelled me to go and like learn about her and her activism work, and like join her book club and read some books and all of this kind of stuff. And hey, and it was so, I've grown so much as a person because of the work that she's done, which I only would have found because, so there's another way that it actually really created a benefit in my life. But there was a little bit of an attachment that was formed, which I think it just makes sense that it would, because I'm like, I don't want to say like I rely on it, but it's something that I've come to expect to happen. And what's funny is that I imagine now that I'm gonna make this video and share this video,
Get the fuck away! Get the fuck away!
you've prompted a lot of people to think differently, right?
Maybe. I think information prompts people to think differently. You know?
Well, when they get pounded with it enough and hear it enough,
Yeah.
eventually it starts to sink in.
Yeah, I think so, man. And when you talk about guys who have been around, like you were one of the real pioneers of MMA. You know, it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you in here. I remember back when you were fighting. I remember back when you fought Matt Hume, and what was that like? And
Extreme Battle.
Yeah, that was John Peretti's thing. I mean,
Right.
dude, you've been around. You've been around. You were the early days, bare knuckle.
Yeah, yeah. No, you know, and the thing is, I always
Did you
tell
fight
people.
Dan Severn,
Yeah, we fought to a draw.
who was 270 pounds at the time?
Yeah, and he was still obviously pretty tough back then, still pretty mobile. It was not a fun fight, I can tell you, carrying his weight around for 30 minutes, but it was tough. But Matt Hume is the guy that made me realize that I wasn't a fighter yet, because I was 15-0. I think I was ranked 4th in the world. I fought Matt, ragdolled him for basically the whole first round, threw him around like a ragdoll. But he was just biding his time and waiting, and he caught me with some knees and damaged my nose. And the referee and the doctor stopped the fight, because back then it was very controversial. They didn't want a guy with a crushed nose or whatever. And so they stopped the fight. But I realized at that point he knew a lot more than I did.
Yeah, that was an interesting fight because I totally disagree with that stoppage. And I was watching, I was like, this is crazy. How
Right.
could you stop a fight for a broken nose?
Well, and I got headbutted. I used to spar with a lot of pro boxers, and I got headbutted by a pro boxer, and he separated the cartilage from the bone. So that gap is still there. So that's what they felt. My nose was bleeding a little bit, but so that's why they stopped it. So
Right, but broken noses are just
it happens, right?
and it's not dangerous. It's like maybe somebody saw those movies where you like remember in a movie the guy would hit the bottom of a guy's nose and drive the bone up into his
It's
brain.
like Mike Tyson talking about it, right? I
Yeah,
think he talked-
he did.
He hit me like this and put the
Yeah.
bone up to the brain.
That might be the worst Mike Tyson impression I've ever heard. I'm gonna let that go though.
I'm doing my best, man.
Yeah, but back then, yeah, nobody really knew like what was dangerous, what wasn't dangerous. It wasn't like a body of fights that we could draw upon.
And I was doing televised debates with politicians at the time
Were you really?
to keep the sport legal in the state that I was scheduled to fight in. So think of how stressful it is to train for a fight, stay healthy, try and pay your bills, do all the stuff you're doing. And at the same time, I'm debating politicians in that state who are trying to pass a bill to ban the sport that I'm scheduled to fight in that state. I'm panicking. I'm freaking out. So I'd do my homework, and I'd get in debates like Representative Bolin from Illinois. By the time we got done with the debate, he goes, I'll agree with Mr. Militich. He's obviously, I think they expected to go into a debate with a punch-drunk boxer.
Right.
And by the time the debate was done, I crushed him. And he's like, well, maybe if we could just do away with headbutts. That was his rebuttal at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I see how they think, and I see that thought, but I think today, even to this day, I don't mind headbutts.
I don't either, because you train for them.
Yeah.
If they're legal, that's what you're training for.
And it's a legit technique. Like, why is it okay to slam your elbow into someone's face, but it's not okay to slam your forehead into someone's face?
Right.
And it's very effective. If a guy's tying you up in the guard and his head's right there, you can do that,
Right.
and he can't really do it back to you.
I watched, when I was in my first No Holds Barred tournament in Chicago, oh God, I don't even remember the name of it anymore. It's been so long. But I saw a guy get headbutted 42 times in the first round, and he ended up winning with a triangle.
Wow.
He ended up winning the fight. It was Marcel Leverich versus this guy named Johnson, Mike Johnson, I think his name was. Marcel Leverich ends up losing after crushing him with headbutts. Mike Johnson's in the shower. They're running cold water on him, trying to wake him back up, and he collapses, and they have to throw in an alternate. Right?
Wow.
But it was, headbutts obviously were legal then. So.
Wow. Yeah, headbutts, like, that
Knees-
was Mark the Hammer Coleman's
Knees on
move.
the ground.
Knees on the ground, knees
Right.
to the head on the ground.
Yeah.
But if you think about when Coleman was in his prime, he was all about headbutts. And when he fought Maurice and he took Maurice down, that was back in the days when headbutts were legal.
Yeah.
Maurice Smith, he defended against all that.
Doing all of this.
Yeah, it's just another technique.
Yeah.
But without that technique, it's sort of like when when I realized that Taekwondo was very limited was when I started working out with kickboxers. I started getting punched in the face, and I was like, oh no, like what have I learned? I've learned this, thing that is only good if somebody doesn't punch you in the face. Like, this is terrible.
But you were an open thinker, obviously, and you realized it. So the thing was, with early MMA, everybody was so tied to their technique. It's like being tied to a religion. and
Right.
refusing to see something else. Guys who are taekwondo experts, wrestlers, this, that, they were so attached to their art that they refused to learn anything else, and they just die because of it.
Yeah.
Right? They get crushed because of it. And I just early on went, these guys are dumbasses. Why wouldn't you want to know how to do a lot of things? You got to have a big toolbox.
But there was always a lot of pride in your art, right? There was always a lot of guys like wrestlers who were only into wrestling, or kickboxers only into Muay Thai. They just want to stand
Right.
up. They didn't want to go to the ground. They just
Yeah.
want to stand up. And that just costs you in the long run, especially when you see like a real complete fighter, like a guy like Mighty Mouse. Like a guy like Mighty Mouse is the top of the heap.
Trained by Matt Hume, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And he can do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a wrestler, it doesn't matter if you're a kickboxer, you're fucked. You're fucked everywhere with that guy.
Yeah.
And it's because he's got this just incredibly well-rounded skill sets. And I think the days of the specialists, I think, they're still kind of here.
I'm
There's still a
surprised
few
that that's
guys.
still the case.
Yeah, there's a few guys that can still pull it off. But the guys that can pull it off are like the Damian Mayas
Right.
or the Wonder Boys.
Yeah.
Like Wonder Boy's just such an elite striker that is, if he can keep the fight standing, he can kind of work a lot of guys.
And because so many guys have not done karate and things like that,
Right.
he's like a Rubik's Cube they can't figure out.
Yeah,
Right?
well, he's long and that weird sideways stance with that front leg.
Yeah.
Those guys who have a good front leg, like that karate style, point fighting style, that they're used to blitzing in with that good front leg,
Yeah.
very hard to gauge that distance.
Yeah.
It's so different.
Yeah.
I think Woodley did the best job of anybody in fighting him, and I think that's like a roadmap for it because. Like, people booed Woodley and gave Woodley a lot of shit, but look, Woodley's the one who hurt him in both fights.
Right.
And that's the way you got to fight that guy. You can't just charge after that guy. You
And the
get countered.
criticisms of Woodley, in my mind, I think, look, it's a two-man dance, right? Woodley kept his title.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's all that matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm the champ, I'm just trying to keep my title. I'm doing enough to win. I'm not there to be the most exciting fight. That was my mentality because I knew because I fought totally different. Before I got to the UFC, I was just a psychopath and go out and just go 100 miles an hour until the guy was done.
Right.
But once you get in the UFC, then it's, okay, we can cut you if you lose.
At Sam Adams, we have a question. Why are we not toasting each other more? Because to toast someone is to let them know that they are appreciated. Let's let more people know that.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and as you can probably tell, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the double-bladed sword. Now, the double-bladed sword has appeared in pop culture in various iterations. I think one of the most popular and iconic is Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber. But a double-bladed sword like this also appears in, say, Dungeons & Dragons 3 and 3.5. And I think there's a couple of animes that have double-bladed swords as well. So what I want to try and explore in this video is, are these things even practical? Now, I have seen a couple of videos that actually say this is a piece of junk, why would you ever do it, there's no point. And I've also seen a couple of videos defending it. So what are my opinions? And ultimately, this is speculation, okay? I do have a background in martial arts and historical swordsmanship, and I'll be applying my own understanding and knowledge of that stuff to this kind of weapon, and there is a lot to try and analyse and break down. Now, just to let you know how I constructed this monstrosity, this is actually 2 Rollins synthetic nylon practice swords, and because they actually have an internal core that's basically a giant screw, all you need is an oversized nut right there, and they screw together really well. It's like how I'm made to do it. Not really. So yeah, you just remove the pommel from the swords, screw them together, and you actually have a really functional training double-bladed sword, because these are made to take like huge impacts, okay, and to simulate the approximate weight. They're not perfectly, they're a little bit on the lighter end, but the weight is still a very good analog for a real sword, and so when you put them together, this actually makes a really functional practice double-bladed sword. Well, look at that. First I want to explore functionality, and then after that, practicality. And when I look at this, how practical a weapon is this in real life, that actually informs us somewhat, I feel, as to why it didn't really exist in history. Now, I do have some vague memories of me trying to play around, pretending a stick is a double-bladed weapon, and I always held it like this. And I think in a lot of TV shows and stuff, they fight with it, you know, holding it like this. This is how Darth Maul usually holds his. He had a bit more kind of grip or length on his handle, but generally fighting with it this way, okay? You know, just 2 hands. Now, when I just hold it like this and try and go through different moves, okay, there is a measure of, functionality that you could get out of it. But what I'm finding is that the cross guards, if you actually have cross guards, they tend to get in the way of your edge alignment, especially if you're holding like, because just by virtue of the length of this handle, my hands need to go on down an inwards angle like that for me to hold it, because it's shorter than the width of my shoulder. So maybe if this was further out, the crossguard wouldn't be as detrimental, but because my hands need to be angled inwards when I hold it, that means the crossguard can't flip up and down past my forearms with any amount of ease. And so because that gets in the way, you might think, well, it's not an effective weapon. Well, no, it's not as effective. You can still get a measure of effect, but it's not as effective when you hold it this way. You don't have to hold it this way. In actual fact, when I was, my own experimentation, holding it like a spear actually nullifies that problem completely and gives you more options fighting. I find you can present the tip to your opponent much easier. You can actually even get more reach if you want, like fully leaning out. And look, because my handle is essentially doubled from a regular longsword, I get way more reach in a thrust, and it gives you a lot of options, all right? And so when I was experimenting with this thing, I was finding that, my goodness, this isn't nearly as terrible as some people have said. So the obvious comparison between a double-bladed sword is with a single-bladed sword. But it's not only that. What about comparing it to a spear? Because this is now a polearm, right? You wouldn't. It's wrong to really call it a sword. I'm not really fighting it like a sword. I'm not holding a sword grip. I think one of the best grips, as I mentioned, is like a spear. Okay, a double-bladed, swordy spear. But still, let's compare it to a regular sword. You should put double-bladed sword down. Like my new sword, you might recognize it. This was Skarlgrim's, and he was selling it. When I heard that he was selling it, I was like, well, I know someone who might like to buy it. Whoa. So my own personal impression when comparing a regular longsword to a double-bladed sword is that the initial engagement can be pretty much the same. There's really only a couple of guard positions that you wouldn't be able to do with a regular sword, because remember, the double-bladed sword is just a sword with a sword on the other end, okay? And so, however way you want to place your guard, you can do that with a double-bladed sword. So off the bat, they're quite equivalent, except if you're doing it like this. If you had, a wrath position or something, well, you have a blade that you can actually present to your opponent already and spin it around. So if I wanted to try and kind of do a wrath guard with a double-bladed sword, I would actually want to keep my point on point, right? Presenting to the opponent, very similar to one of the positions that you hold when fighting with poleaxe, okay? Because there are actual other weapons historically that are essentially kind of double-bladed. The poleaxe is one of them, because on the opposite end, sometimes they have a spike, a metal spike. Not always, but sometimes. And so one of the guard positions, you'd have a poleaxe on one end, hold that ready for a big strike, and you present that spike, that tip, to your opponent, so you can still thrust with it. This is a very similar guard position, and so you can keep your opponent at guard or at bay, and then if they try and attack, you have a very strong defensive point to just knock something aside, and then you're ready to fight. Knock aside and then hit. And this blade essentially should be pushing aside your opponent's weapon, leaving them open for a counter strike, which is very quick. This is, I think, one of the biggest advantages about a double-bladed sword. I have heard some arguments saying that a regular sword is just as quick. Let's move it.
A major bombshell was dropped today.
Ready to go to war?
Oh, yeah.
Let's break that down. A regular sword can be very quick. I'm not saying it isn't. So if you knock a strike aside, you can follow up with a reverse cut very quickly. Just hit. And you can keep running into your opponent. So just deflect, strike, thrust, hit. So these are all pretty darn fast attacks. Whether it was a block, parry, or a post, that whatever length of time it took for me to spin it around, that length of time would have been halved if I was using a double-bladed sword. And so if I led in with a strike, or I just raised a guard, and then I wanted to spin to do a reverse cut at the other end, the length of time it takes my blade to re-engage is halved with a double-bladed sword, because it's right there. The blade will be here, where I go to strike and block and just hit with the other end. That's actually very darn quick. And the regular sword, like I said, all the way around to hit with the other end. This, half the time. This is a significant advantage that I don't think we should disregard. And it's very well worth analysing and trying to consider seriously. Now, in my opinion, one of the best moves with a longsword is a single tempo riposte, where your guard, your defence, is an attack in one move. And I was watching this longsword tournament where one of the opponents pulled one off, and it was just beautiful, where he just simply had a low guard, his opponent came in with a high strike, and he just brought in like that, just straight up. He caught the opponent's blade with a perfect block, and the tip of his sword went right underneath his opponent's armpit, right there, just bang, right in. Whoa, that was a beautiful move. very quick, so decisive, a single tempo riposte. Now, when you do that, there's really no need for a secondary blade, but as soon as you go into a 2-tempo move, whatever it is, 2 moves, this is where the double-bladed sword actually has really significant advantages. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many second tempo moves that you can do that don't require you to move your blade too much, especially if you want to engage with a Zornhau and finish with thrust. Well, there's really no extra position here to put your sword into for that second move. So I'm not saying the double-bladed sword will be better in every regard. I'm just saying in a lot of situations it has some significant advantages. Keeping your blade on point and keeping your opponent at a measurable distance away from you, because again, this is a long blade, right? And then you're ready to defend in any way. Like you've got a full defensive action here where you can defend your upper body and lower body pretty darn effectively, okay? And with whatever defensive move that you want, and you don't have to wait for your opponent to attack you, you've got this blade right there, you can thrust, you can go to any number of attacks, but whatever you do, you have a second attack all the way ready to go. Now, you might be thinking, okay, hang on, it's a double-bladed sword. If you miss with the first blade, wouldn't the next one naturally miss anyway? Or if the opponent blocks it? No, not really. With whatever first strike you do, you can just step forward afterwards, so your second strike has even a greater chance of landing. And then if you are waiting for the opponent to strike first, there are multiple effective guard positions that you can employ. Something where it's more raised up, it'll take a bit more energy, but presenting that point to your opponent. Or there's even good at-rest guard positions where you're just kind of holding it low, it's there, ready to knock aside and defend. You can easily defend your legs by moving them back, and then when you deflect, you can easily strike back and really fast. And remember, each one of these attacks can also be switched to a defensive action very quickly. Instead of a strike, you can sweep, knock aside, reverse, and then hit again. And these blades are moving consecutively, really fast in response to one another. I strike, I withdraw to re-engage, but then the blade is already there. There. Like, these are fast, attacks. That would be very difficult to defend against, I think. Now, in all the experimentation that I've been showing here, notice how I've been holding the sword, like a spear, okay? So not the Darth Maul kind of double quarterstaff maneuvers thing. As I mentioned before, all the moves that I've been playing around with would be more difficult holding it like this. Again, mainly because of the crossgun, perhaps the length of the handle. But even with a longer handle, again, I still think you get more versatility, and honestly, the strikes, you just feel more engagement with your biomechanics, that there's more power behind them, holding it like this. Just going in for a big old cut like that. I mean, there's a reason why we hold swords like this. We don't hold them like this, obviously, because, point of the blade, but also the way we want to engage our muscles, okay, just down in with a strike. There's another part to a double-bladed sword that I think is worth considering, and that's the matter of spinning, okay, spinning the actual weapon. Now, of course, usually when you spin a sword, dumb thing to do, you'd never do it in combat. But with a double-bladed sword, maybe there's a bit more viability in it, simply because there's a lot of blades swinging towards your opponent. They are twice as fast as if you were with a regular, blade. So hit. So these are pretty, fast consecutive. And I'm not doing it in casual. I'm not even trying to be fast here. But these blades are moving towards your opponent very quickly. Having said that, though, there is a crossover point that leaves you fairly open. When you go strike, and you move down to crossover, there's no real guard position here. The blade isn't there. But having said that, there's a blade moving around to knock aside anything that might come in, and then you follow up with another strike. And so knock, hit. So, I don't know. And we have to remember, this is also intimidating. If you're facing off an opponent with a weapon spinning like that, which is like blade,
I got dumped and I feel lost. And now things are getting weird. If only there were a group of people specifically designed for advice. I guess you would. I want us all to be friends again. You're coming with me tonight. What are you wearing right now? Jeans and a top? Are you doing that thing where you call a sweatshirt a top? No. Here's to second chances for old friends.
Who's ready to change their entire life?
Me.
I mean, trying to time your attack to try and block these strikes that are just going crazy towards your opponent. Okay. Look, you could defend against it, it'd be difficult. The other thing is, if you do defend against it, and say you're in a strike and they block, okay, this could lock away your weapon pretty good, I do admit, but there are other ways you can counter it, and then hit again. So it's a bit too much of a complex thing for me to make a call on right now. I'd actually want to experiment with this, with sparring against another person. Unfortunately, there's no HEMA club nearby that I could try it out with. But a lot of you guys are HEMA practitioners, and, you know, I assume a good number of you might have rolling synthetics like this. I just went to my hardware store, bought these things. The thread is an 8W or W8 thread for the screws. You just find an extra long nut like that, and some washers so you get the right distance, and it also holds the grip in place. They don't bother you when you grab it. And then you've got a double-bladed sword. You can as far as someone, I know what I'm going to be trying out, just to get a better read onto how effective this really would be. But from my own experimentation at the moment, I actually think there's some validity to it. It's looking pretty positive. Now, if these are effective, okay, there are a lot more people in the past who were fighting with swords. Why don't these things exist historically? Well, I think there's a number of reasons, okay? Because we've looked at the functionality, now let's look at the practicality. And this is a profoundly impractical weapon. I mean, can you imagine...
Yeah, this guy was annoying, bro. I was just about to turn it on. T, get the fuck away from me. T, go. T, get away. I am eating. bit. Oh shit. Don't. Yeah. Where the heck is the sun? Boy, let me tell you something. Oh my god, I just tried to open this like a fucking edit. I just trying to fucking edit this. Oh my goodness. That'll probably be really odd.
Whose idea was it to fucking add phantoms, bro? That's so annoying, dude. Like, oh, you have to go to sleep. Oh shit. Like, it's not, you know, like, it's so... tedious. And it's fucking raining too, so like, these things are able to fucking survive. It's so stupid. Oh god. Nigga fucking thanks. I just had to fucking edit again. I just had to fucking edit. I mean, it was good, you know, built that muscle memory, you know? Built that muscle memory. Muscle memory. That's so fucking dumb, dude. The sun's fucking up. Come on. Are you kidding me? Bitch. Oh my fucking god, bro. This rain is fucking annoying, dude. It's a fucking day, bro. What the fuck do you want me to do, man? There we fucking go, bro. Finally, man. Damn. Fucking pieces of shit.
smash them. Let's see what these can do. I got myself on camera breaking the sword. The sword can't use them. What? Yes, the sword. Yeah, they work. One way or another. Alright, okay, so you look really interested. You know what they say. So I guess I'll leave you. My sword made me bleed my own blood. I need protection. Okay, and style. I can't have a child breaking up. Yeah, but you see these aren't stylish. They make all this fun. Huh? The wind is very witty. Huh?
Are you still dating that cute guy? You guys are completely adorable together. We actually just broke up. Oh my god, way too good for him. We didn't technically meet, but I think he was a psycho. I'm glad you guys figured it out. I'm not letting you scroll side out. Hell yes. Girls go to the bathroom together. I don't have to be. What does it mean to do is go to the bathroom? Is this a riddle? We've got a lot to teach you. I'm so Venmoing you.
Oh my goodness. Fucking annoying pieces of shit. Shit. No! It's going all the way down and taking out all my fucking lights. Fucking dumb, bro.
So Gaza, that shield fell over. You know what type of shield it is? It's a kite shield. And stop. The wind blew it over. Now I want to know who knows how to use it. Alright, you ready? So we're gonna be hitting here. I think we're gonna pick up one of those.
This game fucking sucks. Yeah, you can. You see the big screen? What? Is he recording? Oh, the disrespect. The disrespect. You gonna tell us that? This is a fucking dead body, I think it's all good. Damn, trick shot. Either they're all bots, or he's pretty good. I can't really tell, but I mean, he's getting a lot of kills. Who? Now, whatever. Oh, that widow though. Get the fuck out of here. Feeding, it's, you know, like, it's not feeding if it's not a kill-based game. Or like a point-based game. This isn't Dota. Mom! Damn.
If my team was good,
Destroying. No.
I'm past these.